Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another Future Fight Vanguard video. Happy belated Mother's Day. Like I said in the last video, this video is the makeup video since I did not make a video on Mother's Day. I explained the reasons why in the last video, so you guys should know already. So yeah, we're going to be talking about our second Future Fight of the day. We are going to be talking about the Darkface Gredora deck. So G-EB02 Darkface, many people just call it the Gredora deck. It is a control lockdown kind of deck. I'll explain further into it when we start getting into the cards, but we're going to flip our G-Zone here really quick. Alright, and then we're going to get right into the main deck. Darkface is the G-Break Mega Colony deck. For those of you who don't know, the clan Mega Colony focuses on not letting your opponent's cards stand and kind of like locking them down from not attacking you. Also, like they usually get effects based off of, how many units are rested and all this stuff. So basically, if your opponent attacked you or you stunned them, their unit should be rested, so you get a lot of benefits off of that. So let's talk about the new grade 3 that they got in the Zoo set, which was Evil Governor Darkface Gredora. Gredora is a card that's like so good all on its own, basically carries the tempo of the deck. It has two abilities. The first one is an auto Vanguard ability that's once per turn that says when your unit is placed on Vanguard Circle or when your G unit strides, you can pay the cost, counterboss 1. If you do, choose a column and your opponent cannot call units on the rearguard circles of that column during the next turn. They cannot be superior called as well, so it blocks your opponent out from calling anything in the columns that you choose, or in the column that you choose. And something to note about that skill is it does say when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle or when your G unit strides. You can't do it twice. You cannot ride, use it, then stride, use it. It's once per turn. And then also, if you're riding it the same turn that you're striding it, you need to use the ability when you ride it, because when you stride it, you will miss the once per turn clause, etc., and then you won't be able to use it. So don't get caught up on that. The second ability is a Vanguard skill as well, that is auto as well. This one's Generation Break 1, and it says at the beginning of your ride phase, you can Soul Blast 1, and if you do, your opponent chooses a face-up card from their damage zone, turns it face down, and you countercharge. This is super, super important to use every turn, because as far as being a control deck, like, this deck will lock down your opponent's resources as well. So, it would allow you to take away counterboss from them while you gain counterboss, which is really important because this deck can be kind of counterboss heavy sometimes, or not even sometimes, but like this deck is counterboss heavy, so it is important to use this skill all the time. Always remember to use this skill, and it also takes away counterboss from your opponent, so you don't want them to be able to use their skills either. So our next card is our backup grade 3. We almost never want to ride this card. It's really only good as a rear guard. Is Intimidating Mutant King Darkface Alcides. Alcides is, we don't really run the old Darkface anymore just because it has no purpose in this deck, no real purpose, at least in my opinion. But when this Darkface Alcides has two abilities. The first one is a auto, the second one is a continuous. The auto skill is when this unit is placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1 and soul blast 1. If you do, you choose a column, you rest all your opponent's rearguards in that column, and those units cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase. So this is important because you need to have a lot of your opponent's units resting, if not all of them. So if your opponent still has standing units on the board, you want to make sure that those are rest to use all of your skills most efficiently. Also, this is what helps you rest those pesky resist units, because Darkface Alcides targets the column, and so if there's double resist units in a column and they're standing and you can't find a way to rest them, you can't find a way to stun them, then you use Darkface Alcides, you target the column, both of the resist units get rested because they are not being directly targeted, and then both of them cannot stand either because they're not being directly targeted, so it's very good. The second ability is a continuous Vanguard Rearguard Generation Break 2 Dark Device skill. I'm going to pause right there and say, for those of you who don't know, Dark Device is one of the keywords of Mega Colony. And Darkface basically means that there's no standing units on your opponent's field in the same column as the unit that the Dark Device unit is in. So if this unit's in the rearguard circle, the right rearguard circle, across the board from your Darkface Alcides, there should be no standing units. If there are no units at all in that column, that also counts as having no standing units, so Dark Device still activates then. A lot of you had questions about that when you were shooting messages about this deck. So, like I said, continuous Vanguard rearguard skill, Generation Break 2, Dark Device. During the battle that this unit attacks, it gets 10,000 power, and your opponent cannot intercept. So this also helps when you stun grade 2s and you attack with these, and your opponent can't intercept with the grade 2s because of you attacking with this. So, really, really good. Then going into our grade 2s, we run 11 grade 2s. We run 4 Light Horn Mutant Dangerous Horn. This is our 10k that we got from the set. So I'm actually kind of surprised that they gave Mega Colony a 10k because they didn't give one to Asha and they didn't give one to Big Belly, but they gave one to Mega Colony, so power to them. But it has 2 abilities. The first one's on auto, second one's a continuous. The first one says when this unit is placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, choose a card from your hand and you may reveal it. If the revealed card or your Vanguard is not a card with Darkface in its name, this unit gets minus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So basically when you write it on grade 2, you want to reveal Darkface, reveal either Gredora or Darkface Alcides. If you cannot, then this unit will lose 5,000 power, but I would still write it in that case. It would just mean that after that, when we switch over to your opponent's turn, it would go back up to 10k. So I would still ride it for the defense, even if you don't have Darkface in your hand, but it will suck because your opponent will probably block it, and you probably won't get a damage in where you normally would. The second ability is a continuous rearguard skill that says if you have a grade 4 Vanguard with Darkface in its card name, which should be all the time since your stride inherits the name of your grade 3, and the number of your opponent's rearguards in stand position is 1 or less, and this unit gets plus 6,000 power. So it becomes a 16k by itself if your opponent has 1 or less standing units. Then we have 4 Black Spear Mutant Bulge Wasp. Bulge Wasp has 1 auto ability, which is Generation Break 1 and Dark Device. It says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle until the end of the turn, it gets plus 2,000 power. Then if the number of face down cards in your opponent's damage zone is 2 or more, rest all of your opponent's units, and this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So again, another kind of omnidirectional rest skill where it will get around resist because you don't have to select the units. It just says all your opponent's units become rested. So that's really good. Then we have 3 Vulgar Blister. Vulgar Blister has 2 continuous abilities. The first continuous ability is on the rearguard circle. It says if this unit's in the front row, all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit cannot stand to your opponent's next stand phase. The second continuous rearguard ability is you may choose a Vulgar Blister from your rearguard and retire it as the cost for stride of a G unit with the Dark Device ability. So you can free stride with Brilliant or with Vulgar Blister into Overwhelm, into Anguish Sword, and that's it. So that's why we only run 3 of that card. It's free stride. It's good when you can use it. When it's not, you're just using it to lock down your opponent's field and have them not have any units stand. Then we have 4 Nova Mutant Little Dorcas. Little Dorcas is our Stride Fighter as well as our Darkface Searcher. When we don't have the right grade 3 in our hand in the beginning of the game, if you have one of these and you have a Darkface Alcides, you can play this card down, reveal this, search Gredora, discard a card, and call it a day. Moving on to our PG, we have 4 Ink Defense Mutant Black Weevil. This card looks so funny to me. It just reminds me of Weevil from Yu-Gi-Oh! But it has 3 abilities. First one's a continuous, the second one's an auto, and the third one is an act. So it has actually all 3 different types of abilities that there are. The first one is a continuous Sentinel ability that says, Sentinel means that you can't run more than 4 Sentinels in your deck. You guys know that from the deck building limits. Second ability is an auto ability. It says when this card is placed on guard circle from hand, you can discard a card and choose one of your units with Darkface in its name, and it cannot be hit. So you can PG your Vanguard, or you can PG your rearguards if they're Darkface Alcides. So be aware of that. And then an act skill that activates in the drop zone is you choose 2 Ink Defense choose 2 of this card from your drop zone and bind them face up, and then you can draw a card and choose to counter charge one or soul charge one, which is kind of similar to our heal, the way that our heal works. Moving on to the next 4 of our grade 1s, we have Elegant Mutant Twilight Matter at 4. So Twilight Matter has a Dark Device Rearguard skill that says when this unit boosts, if you have a grade 4 Vanguard with Darkface in its name, you can have this unit gain 3,000 power. If you do, at the end of the battle, you draw a card and you put this card in your soul. So it does fuel your soul, and it also draws you cards as well, and also gets you a 10k boost. So very good card. Then we have 2 Bad Luck Star. Bad Luck Star skill is when this unit is placed on the rearguard circle from your hand. If the number of your opponent's rest units is 3 or more, you can Soul Blast one to draw a card. So basically makes itself a free place, a +1, and you get a booster for free. Then we have our starter, which is Excelling Mutant Prombalarva. Prombalarva has 2 abilities, 2 auto abilities. The first one is auto ability Forerunner. Forerunner just means that it can move back onto the rearguard circle when it's ridden upon, like most starters in the game right now. The second ability is an auto rearguard skill that says at the beginning of your ride phase, you can counterboss 1, put this card into your soul. If you do, you draw a card and you rest all your opponent's units. So Prombalarva is very important for a couple reasons. Usually I use Prombalarva when I'm going at the beginning of my would ride to grade 2 turn, because sometimes you don't have a grade 2 and you can counterboss 1, shove this card into your soul at the beginning of the ride phase, draw a card, and then if the card that you drew is a grade 2, you can ride it. So that's very, very important that it happens at the very beginning of the ride phase. And also, if you're striding that turn and Prombalarva is still there, you can actually use it to help with Overwhelm by resting all of their units, because some of their units might not be rested, and therefore you wouldn't get the full benefit that you can get off of Overwhelm off of their field. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Then we have 12 crit for heal. Our first crit is Scissors Shots Mutant Bomb Scissor. This is our Darkface Shove the Soul, gain 5,000 and draw a card crit. Then we have Machining Treehopper. Machining Treehopper is has a skill that says Activation Skill Rearguard Generation Break 1. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards that unit cannot stand, and then you put this card back into your deck and shuffle. So the reason why this card is so good is because when you're not allowing them to call cards to their board, making sure that their units are stunned as well is also very, very good, because they can't play over it and they can't get rid of that card unless they do something else to it. They can't attack with it. So it's just very, very good. Relieve some pressure off of you. And it's not really like, I don't really consider it a minus when I'm stunning something important with this, because it's going to save me an attack of getting attacked where I would have to guard with this. So yeah, very good. Then we have 4 Machining Killer Ant, just a vanilla crit trigger. And then we have 4 Machining Snowwing. Snowwing is our G-Guard heal, our G-Guard based heal for Mega Colony. That says when your card is, or when this card is discarded from your hand for the cost of calling a G-Guardian, you can bind this card and a heal that's already in your drop zone, and then you can choose to counter charge 1 or soul charge 1. Both resources that are important to this deck. Going into our G zone, we have, of course, our Ultimate Stride, Zeroth Dragon of Death Guard, and Zoa. I've talked about this multiple times throughout the many different Zoo Nation videos, but this Ultimate Stride is very, very good when you want to either end the game when your opponent doesn't have a PG, or when they're at 5 damage and you just want to prevent them from 6 damage healing. You know that they need the 6 damage heal to live, or you know, whatever the case may be. You can choose an opportunity for this card and go into it, and it's super powerful. Its effect is when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle Counterboss 2, if you do, you draw a card, you choose a card from your hand, call it to the rearguard circle until the end of the turn. It gets 2 rearguard abilities. The first one is a continuous rearguard ability that says this unit cannot be chosen by card effects, and its power will always be 99,999. The second ability is an auto that says when this unit deals damage to your opponent's Vanguard, your opponent loses the game. So this is what I was talking about with like 6 damage healing. If you attack them with the Zoe unit and they 6 damage heal, it doesn't matter, they still lost. They would heal a damage, but since I did a damage to them, they lose automatically. It's like an auto win condition, so very good. Then for our Stride Zone, we run 2 Poison Sickle Mutant Deity Overwhelm. The reason why we run 2 Overwhelm is because it can flip anything face up, and we don't really need to go into Overwhelm that often. Like, I went into it once in the games that I do because it's like your initial first stride and it's really good. After that, you have better options in my opinion, depending on what deck you're against. Um, so for Overwhelm, she has two abilities. The first one is an Activation Vanguard once per turn ability that says you can counterboss one, choose a card from your G zone, turn it face up. You draw up to the same number of cards as your opponent's rear guards and rest. And if the number of your opponent's rear guards and rest is one or less, then the tuner gets +1 critical and +1 drive until the end of the turn. So if your opponent only has one unit on the board because they're scared of playing a board against you, it's kind of like a lose-lose. Like, they can't play a board because of Gredora. If they do play a board, then you just stun everything, and you allow them to not play cards. Or if they don't play any cards, then Overwhelm like profits basically. If they do play cards, then in the early game they play like 5 rear guards, then Overwhelm will allow you to draw 5. So either way, it is a plus. You either draw 5 and dry check 3, which is +8 cards to your hand. You can draw 4 and dry check 3, so that's 7 cards. 6 cards for 3 cards, 5 cards for 2 cards, and then still 5 cards for 1 card because you get extra 1 drive. So obviously, the more rear guards they have, the more beneficial it is to you. But if they don't, it makes sure that it covers that as well, so that your opponent can't get out of it completely. Then it has a Generation Break 3 Dark Device continuous skill that says all of your units get plus 2,000 power for each face down card in your opponent's damage zone. So this works very well in synergy with Gredora, like taking away their counterblast every single turn. Because by the time you go into the second Overwhelm, all of your units will be getting a significant power boost because your opponent should have either used their own counterblasts through the skills, or we're taking their counterblasts from them every single turn. So it's just very good at that point to use, Overwhelm again. Then we have one Fencing Master Mutant Deity Anguish Sword. Anguish Sword has a Dark Device skill that is an act skill, which means it activates during your main phase once per turn. You can counterboss one, choose up to the same number of your units as the number of your opponent's units in rest, and they get plus 4,000 power. And then if you chose 3 or more units, you draw a card and countercharge one. So again, helping your resources, helping you draw cards, just a good card if you can't find anything else to go into. Then we have 2 of the GBA actually, which is Seal Assassin Mutant Deity Tyrantus. Tyrantus is super good because it has a continuous Vanguard Generation Break 8 ability. It says all of your opponent's Vanguards and Rearguards lose their auto abilities and they cannot intercept. And then all of your units get plus 5,000 power for each of your opponent's Vanguard and Rearguard circles and rest. So this is very important because if your opponent again has a full field, you can actually just turbo into GB8, and then your whole field will be getting plus 30k, which a lot of times is too much for them to worry about guarding. So, and we run 2 of them. So if you can't win on the first one, go into the second one, you'll probably win on the second one. Then we have 2 Raging Spear Mutant Deity Stun Beetle. Stun Beetle is in here for a pretty selective case, but if your opponent happens to heavily guard your first stride turn really hard and you don't see them check a PG in the next turn after that, you can actually Stun Beetle them if you have the counterboss to do so, which you probably will, but you can Stun Beetle them, and if they get hit by Stun Beetle and you use the skill, then they probably just can't win the game from there. Like, that's how powerful Stun Beetle is as an effect. But its effect is Generation Break 2, auto ability, Vanguard Circle. When this unit attack hits a Vanguard, you can counterboss 2 and choose a Stun Beetle from your G zone, turn it face up. If you do, then all of your opponent's Vanguard cannot stand during your opponent's next stand phase, and during your next opponent's ride phase, then your opponent cannot normal ride, but they can ride with the effect of a card. So it is important to note that most decks will just lose because of this, because it will rest their Vanguard, they can't do anything about that, and then they can't ride to make their Vanguard re-standing next turn, which means that if they choose to stride, their stride will come in and rest, and they won't get any drive checks regardless for the turn. So with them not getting any drive checks, and it's like lessening their advantage through attacking, then they really can't do anything. And sometimes when you hit people with Stun Beetle, they just draw and then they pass turn back to you, and then they end their turn. So pretty good. Then we have 2 Lawless Mutant Deity Obturandus. Obturandus has an act ability that says Generation Break 2. During your main phase, anytime you can counterboss 2 and choose a card from your hand, discard it, and your opponent cannot call any cards to their rearguard circle until the end of your opponent's next turn. So, and he or she cannot superior call as well. So basically, until your next turn, your opponent can't call any cards to rearguard circle. This is super good against decks that are super rearguard reliant, or if your opponent just tried to not play any rearguards to protect them from overwhelm, you can just Obturandus them and lock them out for at least 2 turns, and that allows you 2 turns to turbo into GB8 or turbo into Zoa, whatever you want to do. We have 1 Cerise in case our opponent tries to stay on grade 2 against us, so pretty good. Then we have 5 G Guardians, 2 Relish Ladies, 2 Morphosion, and 1 Grice Force. So what Relish Lady does is it is our G Flip Guardian from the G Guardian flip set. It says when this unit is placed on guard circle during the battle that your opponent's Vanguard attacked. So the skill can only be used when your opponent's Vanguard attacks and you're guarding during the Vanguard attack, which sucks because it doesn't get any power, but it does have a very good ability nonetheless. So when this unit is placed on guard circle during the battle that your opponent's Vanguard attacked, you can flip a G-Guard face up, and then if you do, your opponent chooses 2 of their rear guards and they may rest them. If they do not choose to rest them, or they cannot rest them, like they don't have 2 to rest, then you draw a card, you countercharge 1, and you soul charge 1. So super good, refunds your resources, and you draw extra cards. Super good. So then we have 2 Wing Wall Mutant Deity Morphosian. So what Morphosian does is when it's placed on the guard circle, if the number of your opponent's rear guards in stand is 2 or less, then this unit gets plus 10,000 shield. So it becomes a 36k guard easy in a stack. And then we have 1 Mutant Deity Fortress Grice Force. This is only useful in some decks, like decks that have really good boosters and stuff like that, basically. But when this unit is placed on the guard circle during the battle that your Vanguard is attacked by my opponent's Vanguard, so this one is even more specific. Relish Lady just says that your opponent's Vanguard has to be attacking, but Grice Force says that your opponent's Vanguard has to be attacking your Vanguard. And then you can counterboss 1. If you do, you rest all the units in your opponent's back row, and then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield for every 2 of your opponent's units at rest. So it is a good little like anti-battle card if your opponent has like some really good cards that activate on boost. Some that come to my head are like Night Rose or Gear Chronicle, having their units in the back row that are going to soul charge and draw them cards and all this nonsense, basically. If you see that they have some really good boosters, you can guard into Grice Force and make it a winning battle instantly. So we're loading up game 1 of Gredora. We're actually going to be playing a 2 out of 3 against my friend Jalen, who's playing Spike Brothers. We draw for turn. We call out a Little Door because we search out Gredora. We discard a crit. He attacks us for 12. We no guard. We get a crit. We use the skill of Promo Larva at the beginning of the ride phase to put it in, draw a card. Then we attack. He gets a heal, so I can't hit with my rear guard. He attacks my rear guard so that I'm not able to use Gredora, which was smart in this case, but I figured I should just ride Gredora anyways because my hand is pretty crappy. I wanted that twin drive, and I also want to be able to use that crit in my hand. So he rides and strides into Agrius, uses his starter skill to get a heal trigger, and then I didn't know that he had heals in his hand already. Otherwise, I would have played this a bit more cautiously, but I knew that he did have at least 2 because I no-guarded Agrius right here, and when I chose to no-guard Agrius, he drew a crit and then got a heal, and then I just took the other damage and, you know, did my thing, and it kind of sucked. I had to guard this for 31 because of the way that the combo worked, but I just PG'd it, guarded Bulge Wasp. I strode into Overwhelm. Gredora's skill locked out at one of his open columns, and Overwhelm allowed me to draw 1, and this card gets +1 drive and +1 crit. So he no-passed it, or sorry, 4'd past it. I didn't think that was going to get it, so I put it all on my rear guard. He G-guards my 21k rear guard with no criticals on it. Then I attack him for 31 with 3 crit, and he G-guards again. Again, I didn't know that he had all the G-guards. So when he went into the GB8, I literally just scooped up the game because if you know how GB8 spikes works, I could not survive. There's no way. Even if I like quadruple 6 damage healed, I probably wouldn't live. So I just played against that deck enough to know that once they hit GB8 and you can't do anything, you probably just lost, unless you're playing a control deck. like an actual control deck that has things that you can do to them during your turn. So yeah, so we lost that game 1, and then we're moving into game 2 here. So I decided to play a little differently, knowing what I'm playing against, and that's why it's also just very important to know your matchup. So I attack for 12, he gets a heal, first damage check. We were making a joke about how his first damage check is always a heal. So I did check a crit when I rode into grade 2. He does G-assist and miss his 2, so that sucks for him, but he does check a heal, so that's good for him. We get to ride Gredora and lock out one of his columns. We decide to play an 8k crit trigger column. We check a crit and a heal, which is really good, and then we attack for 21. He takes it. He draws a grade 2. He attacks, we guard. And then we attack with Vanguard. He just actually had a no guard because I guess he didn't want to use the cards in his hand. So even if he guarded with a 10 and a 5, if I checked a crit trigger, it would have been too much for the rearguard circle or for the other column. So I'm guessing that's why he just no guarded and just took it, regardless of him having shield in his hand or not. He was calculating ahead. And then we are starting up game 3 here, Gredora 3. So this game 3 was actually a really good game 3 to end on because the game was just really solid. He rides, I ride, I attack, I check a crit, he gets a heal trigger, first damage. He attacks for 15, I take it. I stand and draw, I use Primal Larva, and then I use the skill to search out Gredora of the grade 1. I just attack him, and then he uses the skill to call out cards off of Rising. I take it, and then he powers through my trigger. Then I choose the standing column to make him be able to not stand. Use Darkface Alcides, then use Overwhelm to draw 2. Then I use the skill Bad Luck Star to draw 1. I use the crit to put it back and rest the other one and stun it. And then I attack for 14 with Twilight Matter skill. Twilight Matter goes to Soul, draw. I attack with Vanguard, the crit goes to skill, or goes to Soul, draw. And then I attack for 27. He strides into Agrius. Again, he can't call any cards to the column where Prompt Cheetah is currently rested. So I take the first damage because I instantly decided when I was fighting this deck that I wanted to Operandus. So I PG'd. He checks a draw trigger, gives it to his back row, and then he calls the card back after I G-guard the attack. And then I go into Operandus. I don't use Stride skill because there's no point because Gredora does the same thing. I play 2 cards. I attack for 26. He G-guards, sends 3 cards back for a 36k block. I attack for 33. I check double critical and a grade 1. Put it all on my rear guard. I attack, he guards. Then he just goes into Dampier Lily. I G-guard into Relish Lady. He chooses not to rest, so I counter charge, draw, soul charge, and then I guard for 3 to pass. He does check a heal, double heal, so pretty good that I locked down his field because I'm preventing him from doing the GB8 play right now. So I make sure that Frog Raider is stunned. I draw a card and counter charge using the PG. I check a crit, putting it to one end, and then I check nothing with the other ones. Then I attack with 2 crit for 32. I use his Juggernaut Maximum. And then I attack for 26. He takes it. He strides with 2 cards into a Dirty Picaro. He literally can't do anything else but attack me with Dirty Picaro. So I have 3 to pass him. He doesn't get it. We start the turn. I use Gredora to counter charge, make him counter blast. And then I didn't see him have a PG in his hand, and I knew that after this turn he would GB8 me. So I looked at his drop zone. He had 3 PGs, and so I just decided to stride into Zola. I gave Darkface Alcides all the power, and I attacked him, and he did 6 damage heal, but I powered through it and made him lose the game anyways. So, but yeah, so very, very good. I assume that the max he can make guard-wise was the 2 G-guards that guard for 46. So it would have been 46, 61, plus 20, 81. So even that wouldn't have guarded the 99, but then he would have had to throw down the 10 from his hand to make 91, and then 2 more to literally make it 101 guard. And then he wouldn't have been able to guard the Vanguard Zoa and then the Darkface Alacides, which would have been 27 K column without triggers. So, and I knew that my deck was like triggers left as well. So it's just one of those things where you just know what's left in your deck, you choose the most optimal play, and you go for it. But yeah, that being said, that was the Gredora FutureFight. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video. It helps a lot more than you guys think. Make sure to comment down below if you have any questions, tricks, or tips to help people who maybe don't know as much about this deck, or maybe I missed something and you guys want to comment on it. Be sure to put all that in the comment down below. Make sure to just subscribe if you want to see my future videos, and then also click the bell button so that it can alert you of my future videos. If you're already subscribed, you can click a bell button that's next to the subscribe button. Keeps you alerted of my future videos. Also check out the description down below. It has our social media links, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you guys want to support the channel a little more than liking and subscribing, then you can check that out as well, which is down below in the description as our Patreon and our merch store. With that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.